according as a man or a woman might be in the most direct assent. Of religions there were two, that of the people, who worshipped the spirit of the Fire Mountain, and that of the rulers, who believed in magic, ghosts, and divinations. Even this shadow of a religion, if so it can be called, was dying out, like its followers, for generation by generation the white lords grew less in number, or became absorbed in the bulk of the people. Still their rule was tolerated. I asked Simbri why, seeing that they were so few. He shrugged his shoulders and answered because it suited the country, of which the natives had no ambition. Moreover, the present Khania, our hostess, was the last of the direct line of rulers, her husband and cousin having less of the blood royal in his veins, and as such the people were attached to her. Also, as is commonly the case with bold and beautiful women, she was popular among them, especially as she was just and very liberal to the poor. These were many, as the country was overpopulated, which accounted for its wonderful state of cultivation. Lastly, they trusted to her skill and courage to defend them from the continual attacks of the mountain tribes who raided their crops and herds. Their one grievance against her was that she had no child to whom the Khanship could descend, which meant that after her death, as had happened after that of her father, there would be struggles for the succession. "Indeed," added Simbri with meaning and glancing at Leo out of the corners of his eyes. "The folk say openly that it would be a good thing if the Khan who oppresses them and whom they hate, should die, so that the Khania might take another husband while she is still young. Although he is mad he knows this, and that is why he is so jealous of any lord who looks at her, as, friend Holly, you saw tonight. For should such an one gain her favour, Rassen thinks that it would mean his death." "Also he may be attached to his wife," I suggested, speaking in a whisper. "Perhaps so," answered Simbri, "but if so, she loves not him, nor any of these men," and he glanced round the hall. Certainly they did not look lovable, for by this time most of them were half drunk, while even the women seemed to have taken as much as was good for them. The Khan himself presented a sorry spectacle, for he was leaning back in his chair, shouting something about his hunting in a thick voice. The arm of one of his pretty companions was round his neck, while the other gave him to drink from a gold cup, some of the contents of which had been spilt down his white robe. Just then Atene looked round and saw him, and an expression of hatred and contempt gathered on her beautiful face. "See," I heard her say to Leo, "see the companion of my days, and learn what it is to be Khania of Kaloon." "Then why do you not cleanse your court?" he asked. "Because, lord, if I do, there would be no court left. Swine will to their mire, and these men and women who live in idleness upon the toil of the humble folk will to their liquor and vile luxury. Well, the end is near, for it is killing them, and their children are but few, weakly also, for the ancient blood grows thin and stale. But you are weary and would rest. Tomorrow we will ride together," and calling to an officer, she bade him conduct us to our rooms. So we rose and, accompanied by Simbri, bowed to her and went, she standing and gazing after us, a royal and pathetic figure in the midst of all that dissolute revelry. The Khan rose also, and in his cunning fashion understood something of the meaning of it all. "You think us gay," he shouted, "and why should we not be who do not know how long we have to live? But you, yellow-haired fellow, you must not let Atene look at you like that. I tell you she is my wife, and if you do, I shall certainly have to hunt you." At this drunken sally the courtiers roared with laughter, but taking Leo by the arm, Simbri hurried him from the hall. "Friend," said Leo when we were outside, "it seems to me that this Khan of yours threatens my life." "Have no fear, lord," answered the Guardian. "So long as the Khania does not threaten it, you are safe. She is the real ruler of this land, and I stand next to her." "Then I pray you," said Leo, "keep me out of the way of that drunken man, for, look you, if I am attacked, I defend myself." "And who can blame you?" Simbri replied, with one of his slow, mysterious smiles. Then we parted, and having placed both our beds in one chamber, slept soundly enough, for we were very tired, till we were awakened in the morning by the baying of those horrible death hounds, being fed, I suppose, in a place near by. Now in this city of Kaloon it was our weary destiny to dwell for 3 long months, one of the most hateful times, perhaps, that we ever passed in all our lives. Indeed, compared to it our endless wanderings amid the central Ayesha snows and deserts were but pleasure pilgrimages, and our stay at the monastery beyond the mountains a sojourn in paradise. To set out its record in full would be both tedious and useless, so I will only tell briefly of our principal adventures. On the morrow of our arrival the Khania Atene sent us 2 beautiful white horses of pure and ancient blood, and at noon we mounted them and went out to ride with her accompanied by a guard of soldiers. First she led us to the kennels where the death hounds were kept, great flagged courts surrounded by iron bars, in which were narrow, locked gates. Never had I seen brutes so large and fierce. The mastiffs of Thibet were but as lapdogs compared to them. They were red and black, smooth coated, and with a bloodhound head, and the moment they saw us they came ravening and leaping at the bars as an angry wave leaps against a rock. These hounds were in the charge of men of certain families who had tended them for generations. They obeyed their keepers and the Khan readily enough, but no stranger might venture near them. Also these brutes were the executioners of the land, for to them all murderers and other criminals were thrown, and with them, as we had seen, the Khan hunted any who had incurred his displeasure. Moreover, they were used for a more innocent purpose, the chasing of certain great bucks which were preserved in woods and swamps of reeds. Thus it came about that they were a terror to the country, since no man knew but what in the end he might be devoured by them. "Going to the dogs" is a term full of meaning in any land, but in Kaloon it had a significance that was terrible. After we had looked at the hounds, not without a prophetic shudder, we rode round the walls of the town, which were laid out as a kind of boulevard where the inhabitants walked and took their pleasure in the evenings. On these, however, there was not much to see except the river beneath and the plain beyond. Moreover, though they were thick and high, there were places in them that must be passed carefully, for, like everything else with which the effete ruling class had to do, they had been allowed to fall into disrepair. The town itself was an uninteresting place also, for the most part peopled by hangers on of the court, so we were not sorry when we crossed the river by a high pitched bridge, where, in days to come, I was destined to behold one of the strangest sights ever seen by mortal man, and rode out into the country. Here all was different, for we found ourselves among the husbandmen, who were the descendants of the original owners of the land and lived upon its produce. Every available inch of soil seemed to be cultivated by the aid of a wonderful system of irrigation. Indeed, water was lifted to levels where it would not flow naturally, by means of wheels turned with mules, or even in some places carried up by the women, who bore poles on their shoulders to which were balanced buckets. Leo asked the Khania what happened if there was a bad season. She replied grimly that famine happened, in which thousands of people perished, and that after the famine came pestilence. These famines were periodical, and were it not for them, she added, the people would long ago have been driven to kill each other like hungry rats, since having no outlet, and increasing so rapidly, the land, large as it was, could not hold them all. "Will this be a good year?" I asked. "It is feared not," she answered, "for the river has not risen well and but few rains have fallen. Also the light that shone last night on the Fire mountain is thought a bad omen, which means they say that the Spirit of the Mountain is angry and that drought will follow. Let us hope they will not say also that this